Thank you all for joining us this Thursday afternoon. Hope you're doing well. We're going to do a Rashi from the very beginning of the fifth aliyah of this parsha of Tetze. We continue to have exposure to so many different mitzvahs in this parsha. It really goes from one to the next, It's quite hard to figure out actually um, what the transitions really are or what the logic of the order is in this parsha. Some of the Mefarshim try to explain certain transitions, but certainly not all of them. But in the fifth aliyah, we go to some of the laws that govern the rights of workers. It's quite a progressive thought if you think about it. The Torah was so ahead of its time in terms of governing many interpersonal relationships and many aspects of the way we relate to each other, the way we damage each other, the way we take care of each other, the way we're responsible for one another, and all of that. But to create a real civil society. But also in terms of the rights of workers, very interestingly. The Torah says over here, Ki savo bekerem re'acha ve'achalta anavim kinavshecha savecha ve'al lo sitein. So when you come into the kerem, to the vineyard of your friend, re'acha, you're allowed to eat grapes, as much as you need to suffice to satisfy your hunger, but you're not allowed to put it into your basket, into your vessel. So right away, Rashi comes to define kind of the scope of this case. It's hard to imagine that this is talking about anybody walking into anybody's field, even reacha, even your friend, and just kind of eating whatever you want. That doesn't seem to be a right that would be coming to any individual. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as property and no such thing as fields and boundaries and fences. There would be no such thing as shmita. If we could all go into each other's property whenever we want, why would we need to have shmita, which would allow that? So Rashi very quickly defines, all this is based in sugyas in Bava Metzia, but ki tavo bekerem recha, it's not talking about just a stam, a regular person walking into someone's field, but specifically the case of a worker. What are the rights that a worker has when he's working in the owner's field? One of the rights seems to be in the vineyard that he's able to eat from the grapes until he's satiated. It's considered to be part of different ways to formulate it, either part of the rights of a worker. Part of what comes along in hiring someone is not only that they get wages or they get the share of the crops, whatever it is, but also during the time that they're there working for you, that they get to take part in the produce, in the eating of the produce of the field. So that's one way to think about it, that it's part of the rights of a worker. It's part of the package deal of hiring someone that this comes along with it. Another way to look at it is not necessarily part of the package deal, but it would be a form of undue cruelty to a worker to have them working for you and collecting your produce and literally not be able to put one piece of it in their mouth when they're hungry. They're starving, they're looking at the food, they're taking the food, and it's all for you and not for them. That would be a form of cruelty. The two explanations are not necessarily mutually exclusive. They could go together. It could be that they're two halves of the same coin or part of the same picture and explanation, but they're two different vantage points from which to understand the basis or underpinnings of this halacha, which of course we don't know for sure. Kadosh Baruch Hu never revealed to us the reasons for his halachas, but if you put them in the context here of other psukim and other mitzvahs, it seems to be the two ways that this mitzvah is explained. So talking about a worker in the field is allowed to eat from the grapes, as much as they need to survive, to be satiated. The only caveat and condition is they're not allowed to put it in their vessel. As Rashi explained, El keler chalotitain, mikan shelo dibra Torah el b'shas habatzir. Not only can they not store it up and put it in their vessel to leave, but this caveat of the pasuk teaches us another limitation of this quite radical halacha, quite radical mitzvah. And that is to define the time at which a worker can collect and eat from the produce of the vineyard, when they can eat the grapes. So first of all, certainly it's not any random person, it's a poa. That's what we learned from the beginning of the pasuk, ki tavo bekerem re'echa. Has to be, the first limitation is that it's someone working in the field, working for the owner. Second limitation now, Rashi says, based on kel yachal ten pshat, you're not allowed to put it in your vessel. Even if you're a worker, you can't put it in a vessel and store it up and take it home with you. You could eat while you're there. The third caveat now, according to Rashi, is that it has to be b'shas habatzir, specifically at harvest time. By the fact that the Torah defines the caveat as not putting it in the vessel, the collection basket, collection vessel, your collection basket, right? You're collecting for the owner of the field in his baskets, but you're not allowed to put it in your basket and take it home, right? You're not allowed to collect it in that way. You can take some and put it in your mouth and eat it, but not put it in your basket and take home. From the fact that it uses that language of the basket, Chazal deduce that this must be not just talking about a poel, a worker in the field of the owner, but specifically a leniency for the worker in the field of the owner at the time of the harvest. When things are going in baskets, in your owner's basket, don't start putting it in your own basket. That's the caveat over here. As opposed to someone who was hired, it's a worker working for the owner, but they're hired to do some weeding, to do some pruning, to do some other work in the field. They don't have the right to partake of the food. This speaks to the original reason which I stated for the mitzvah, that it's a form of undue cruelty. When a person's working in the field, okay, so they're working, they're doing their business, no one's taking any produce in, not the owner, not the worker, okay, everything's fair and equal. But when you're spending all day, every day collecting produce for the owner, it's undue cruelty to not be able to take a little bit of that for yourself as well. And that's why the leniency is specifically given in the case of a worker, and a case specifically of a worker who's working during the harvest time, doing the harvest for the sake of the owner. The fourth caveat is savecha, kenafshecha means as much as you want, but savecha until you're satiated. Velo achila gasta. You can't go overboard. You can't say, oh, I have a leniency. I can eat these grapes. I'm going to stuff my face till there's no tomorrow. It's like the all-you-can-eat buffet, right? So you eat, you can go back if you want a second helping of chicken, you go back to the buffet. But just because you have a free, all-you-can-eat buffet doesn't mean you should stuff your face with it. So too over here, there's a leniency given. It would be cruel if you couldn't take part in it. It would be cruel if you were starving and hungry and not able to eat the things that you're very things that you're picking. But to go overboard and just eat as much as you want until it's achila gasta, disgusting, gluttonous eating, that's not allowed. So really 4 caveats come to light in this very simple pasuk as we see from the Rashis. Number 1 is talking about a worker. Number 2, they're not allowed to put it in their basket and take it home. Number 3, it has to be specifically during the harvest time. And even a worker, even not putting it in their basket, even during the harvest time, they're only allowed to eat until they're satiated. But more than that would be achila gasa, and something not permitted to them, because after all, the field truly belongs to the owner. There's some leniency given for some level of eating, but not to go overboard with that. Fascinating halacha, most of us probably don't think about. We don't work in people's vineyards so much, although maybe in other countries and other societies they do, or maybe we've had occasion to do that, but something very interesting for us to think about just in terms of the Torah's vantage point on the relationship, the hierarchy between workers and employers. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.